Banned Books Week goes back quite a ways. Goes back to 1982, coming on the heels of a 1970 Supreme Court case where the American Library Association and other folks got together and said, "Hey, we have some issues with people trying to challenge what folks can read in schools and libraries," and so they got organized to raise awareness around book banning and book challenges, and so. Banned Books Week was born, and this is the 43rd year for Banned Books Week. It's usually at the end of September. This year, it's October 5 to 11. And what we're going to do today is share with you some basic information about Banned Books Week. We're going to start by having a couple of people introduce some broader picture ideas around Banned Books Week and why it's important. We'll hear about the differences between banning and challenges. We'll also be talking about definitions of censorship. You know, one of the things that often comes up is people say, well, hey, that book's not banned. I can go to the Barnes & Noble in town and buy it there, right? And again, that's missing the picture and the context of where Banned Books Week came from. And it was about protecting issues around not just academic freedom, but the public's right to know. Right, and have access to that. And also, as you'll hear from our many wonderful guests today, it's also about representation, and it's also about people seeing themselves in the materials that they hear and learn about, not just in school, but in other public institutions. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guests to you today. We are also going to, part of what we're doing today is we're going to watch an award-winning short documentary that was shot. It was filmed by several folks here that were students and have graduated, and they have taken time to join us again today. So they're going to talk to us as well a little bit before the film and then after. But as I mentioned, we're going to start with Kathy Michael from the library. Also, Professor Jen Spitzer is here, and we're going to make a few introductory remarks. The filmmakers will come up, we'll watch the film, and then we're going to open it up for conversation, and you can talk to our amazing guests today. So, one of our guests, we'll start with our filmmakers. Devon Jezek is a documentary filmmaker and multimedia journalist passionate about educating the world through visual journalism. Her work focuses on women's rights, climate change, animal cruelty, water quality, Jewish life, positive community-based stories, and more. She's worked for various organizations, including NBC6, CBS 12, and Close to Home Productions. Her works have won various awards and have been published in multiple countries. Leila Marcillo-Gomez is also here, photographer, filmmaker, and editor passionate about telling stories that resonate and inspire, recognized by the New York Press Association and Columbia Scholastic Press Association for her photography. She uses her art to spotlight critical social issues from gender equality and racial justice to indigenous rights, the housing crisis, and climate change. Lauren Piccone is here as well, a documentary filmmaker and editor dedicated to creating films that highlight social issues and bring about change. So we see some common threads here for sure. With experience in both film and television, including the series Discovery ID, Lauren has worked on a range of productions across New York as a camera operator and production assistant. She continues to amplify marginalized voices and use her craft to inspire social transformation. We have Kathy Michael here as well, research and instruction librarian, also in charge of the Sterling Archives right here at the Ithaca College Library. Kathy is an amazing resource that we have at the library. We're really fortunate to have somebody that is so passionate about First Amendment issues and multiple literacies. So very honored that she could make time to see us today. And also, of course, Jennifer Spitzer, Associate Professor and Chair of Literatures in English, who has taught a course on banned books for some time. So we're going to get started with Kathy Michael, going to come and make some introductory remarks and move to Professor Spitzer, and then we'll hear from our filmmakers. As I said, we'll then watch the film, and then we'll have a great conversation with all of you. So thanks again for being here. And thank you too to Professor Shack and Sutherland for bringing your folks here today.
Thank you to Mickey Huff and the Park Center for Independent Media for organizing this event. I'm excited to celebrate the freedom to read with everyone here today. The library workers have been at the forefront of fighting book censorship, and we commend everyone for advocating for libraries and librarians. When we take a stand against censorship, we promote the freedom to read, to express ideas, and even those that some people considered unorthodox or unpopular. If you want to get involved, a good resource is this website, unitedagainstbookbans.org, and you can see that there's way that you can make a plan, browse resumes, report censorship, so they can get you started for helping out if you want to do something more proactive. But Banned Books Week is the national book community's annual celebration of the freedom to read. Professor Huff mentioned the event launched in 1982 in response to sudden surge in a number of challenges to books in schools, libraries, and bookstores. The Banned Books Week Coalition brings together the entire book community, including librarians, booksellers, publishers, journalists, teachers, and readers of all types, to bring attention to the issue of censorship. So we do distinguish between books that are challenged from those that are banned, and the challenge to a book is an attempt to remove or restrict the material based on objections by a person or a group, where the banning is the actual removal of those materials. There are many banned books lists. I have a guide through the library. If you search banned books under the guides tab, you can find some of them. The ALA lists a top 10 most challenged. In 2024, 3 of the most challenged were All Boys Aren't Blue, Gender Queer, and Bluest Eye. And then PEN America also has a list of banned books that you might see floating around. They usually issue it this time of year for the event. It includes Clockwork Orange, Breathless, and Sold. According to PEN America's Banned in the USA Beyond the Shelves report, 50% of books banned include sex-related topics and content, 44% included characters or people of color, and 39% included LGBTQ plus characters or people. And if you wanted to discover more titles, we have in the library a blind date with a book display. And when you enter the library to the right, there's a wonderful display. You can look through it and maybe check out a book and learn more about that book. So please come in the library, check it out at the circulation desk. According to American Library Association's Censorship by the Numbers, which is an infographic, in 2024 there's 2,452 books that were challenged, and there were 821 censorship attempts. It describes a sharp increase since the early 2000s due to campaigns organized by pressure groups. As far as where books are censored, 55% of challenges are in public libraries and 38% are in school libraries. So most of them are in school and public libraries. While academic libraries don't have these type of challenges that are found in school and public libraries, we must advocate on their behalf. I also want to bring attention to a doctrine that a lot of librarians follow called the Library Bill of Rights, and that was adopted in 1939 by the American Library Association. It's fairly short, and I'll just read a few parts of it. Books and other library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people of the community the library serves. Materials should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. Libraries should provide materials and information presenting all points of view on current and historical issues. Materials should not be prescribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. Libraries should challenge censorship in the fulfillment of their responsibility to provide information and enlightenment. So that's a little bit from the Library Bill of Rights. So I was really excited last fall when Devon, Leila, and Lauren, students in Professor Scott's doc workshop class, decided to focus on this issue of book banning, especially from the perspective of politically active young readers. So I am really thrilled to be here with you all today to see the screening of Pages of Protest. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy, Michael, everybody.
So I'm here, I guess, because I have been teaching a banned books course at IC for about 10 years. So I thought I would just talk about what some of my takeaways were from teaching this topic for 10 years. Just to say, by way of introduction, when I first got to Ithaca College and started teaching the course, I was teaching mostly what felt like literary history. So I was teaching a lot about the obscenity and pornography trials from the 1920s and 30s about Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses, or Lady Chatterley's Lover, or books like Radcliffe's Hall, The Well of Loneliness, which was considered the first openly lesbian novel of the 20th century. The banning of Uncle Tom's Cabin for its anti-slavery messaging. But I had no idea how over the last 5 years book bans would absolutely explode and become kind of the center of the culture wars in the US. And I would argue that the explosion of book challenges over the last few years was laying the groundwork for the takeover of the far right, testing how far we as a democracy would tolerate assaults on free speech, a free press, and intellectual freedom. So I really saw book banning as like a version of the canary in the coal mine. According to a new report, I'm just echoing a little bit of what wonderful Kathy, who I often work with, as well as Jenny in the libraries, just said. According to a new report from PEN America, public schools across the U.S. saw more than 6,800 book bans in the 24-25 school year, 6,800. And although Florida, Texas, and Tennessee remain the 3 states that have the most book censorship and book banning, just to put that into perspective, in the last few years, 35 states have introduced 137 new bills limiting what schools can say about race, slavery, American history, sexual orientation, and gender identity. So when we think it's just a couple of states, like if we just, like bracket Florida off, it's 35 states have introduced these types of bans. So if we think it's not coming for us, it's coming for us. And as Kathy said so eloquently, books written by LGBTQ+ authors and authors of color are the books most targeted by book challenges, by right-wing groups, politicians, parenting organizations like Moms for Liberty, perhaps you've heard of it, books about queer, trans, non-binary characters, such as the ones Kathy just mentioned, All Boys Aren't Blue, Genderqueer, Fun Home, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. These are books I teach in my class, and books that discuss the experiences of people of color, that explore racism, discrimination, police violence, from The Bluest Eye to The Hate U Give, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. These are all books that have made the list over the last 5 years. And then, of course, there are books that just dare to discuss bodies and women's sexuality in particular. So books like Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, The Handmaid's Tale, The Diary of Anne Frank. These are also categories of books that are often targeted for removal from library shelves, from classrooms, especially in public schools. So here, I promise I'm going to summarize my takeaways from teaching this class for 10 years. Here they are. Discussions about age appropriateness, especially for elementary school children, are important, and parents have the right to weigh in about what their own children read, But book bans are rarely about morality or protecting youth. They are about controlling the discourse around what can and cannot be discussed. Book bans. Books are often weaponized to sow greater political division. Are we shocked about that? Probably not. Legislators, religious organizations, and parent groups that try to ban books have almost never read the books in question. They've often just read the cover, right? Or they've heard about the book from somebody else. Book bans reflect fears of a growing multiracial democracy that is not predominantly white. Book bans reflect fears of gender and sexual diversity and women's autonomy. Book bans are often premised on the idea that books are propaganda, but often books do the opposite, right? Like producing a vast array of complex responses and takeaways. The other thing I would say is book bans are often counterproductive, right? So for decades, book challenges create a bigger readership for certain books, drawing attention to those very texts and authors being challenged. Many formerly challenged books also, eventually go on to become literary classics and ubiquitous on reading lists and syllabi. Toni Morrison, for example, is probably the single most challenged author of the 20th century. All of her books have made it to banned and challenged lists, The Bluest Eye being, of course, one of them. And I think it's not only because she is absolutely the best author and every book you read, you feel like you've been transformed, but I think she, one of the reasons why she has been read over and over again and why she is so often censored is because she refuses to show America a flattering image of itself, which reminds me of Oscar Wilde's famous dictum, the quote, "The books that the world calls immoral are the books that show the world its own shame." Morrison dares to write books about the things she does not and did not see represented, books that centered Black women and girls, books about the toxic toll of anti-Black racism, the way it erodes the bodies and minds of her Black characters and dehumanizes everyone. She also dared to tell the truth about our country's history without catering to white audiences. So I think the last takeaway I'll say is books that have been banned are banned because they have meant something to people. They are books that start conversations, that reflect difficult and unflattering parts of our history, and that make us think and feel. And like what a gift a book is, that it can reflect back someone's experience like a mirror or make them feel less alone in their struggles. Many of my banned book students talk about how the sheer absence of gender and sexual education in their high schools. Did you experience that sheer absence or distorted kind of pedagogy? And how they hunger to read books that dare to talk about love and relationships and even sexual and emotional abuse, right? They want to see those stories. Many of my students talk about growing up in homogenous communities and how they yearn for other cultural experiences and books that reflect that. Finally, last thing I'll say, students deserve to see their own experiences affirmed and represented as much as they need to be exposed to people with different points of view and different ethnic, racial, and religious backgrounds. Students very much palpably see a connection between what's being censored and how their own lives and experiences are being invalidated. We are a diverse nation, and we deserve to read texts that reflect that diversity. I read banned books because I'm reading them as a form of consolation, resistance, poetry, self-empowerment, consciousness raising. And when I feel despair, which gosh, I feel a lot of despair recently, I remind myself that literature, art, and ideas are the most formidable challenges to political extremism and to an autocratic government. Thanks.
Our next speakers we want to bring up just to introduce themselves and talk about their amazing project that culminated in a short documentary film called Pages of Protest. And a brief description: in the United States, book banning has increased at an alarming rate. And this documentary that we're going to see follows activists on the front lines of the battle against book bans, exploring the complex fight between censorship and free speech. Pages of Protest critically examines the history of book banning in the U.S., exploring how politics, religion, and shifting cultural battles shape information control and ideas. The documentary follows the life of a young queer black student activist, Datavian Daniels, whom I actually had the pleasure of working with as an intern at Project Censored, who is fighting the Texas legislature and radical political groups who aim to ban books that represent BIPOC and LGBTQ+ individuals.
Hi everyone, I'm Devon. I'm Lauren. I'm Leila. And we are the co-directors of Pages of Protest. And we created the last fall. It's our student resource. And to start, we got into this. Leila goes to yeah. So basically, I don't know about you guys, but I grew up like my whole life like super involved with libraries, super like working in them, working as part of an organization. You know, just go like to them, being a child in the library. So they've always been super important to me. And I guess 2023, I read this article about library in upstate New York here, not too far from here, like an hour away from here, where like they had tried to post a drag queen story now, and it's like a small community, you know, upstate New York. They tried to post a drag queen story hour that basically like tore the whole town apart over, you know, whether they should be allowed to do that. And basically the whole library ended up being shut down, and all of the library owners like quit or were fired. And then the library was for like 6 months or more, and still didn't have access to that resource that I had. And that to me was just like so shocking. Like I couldn't imagine that being like one in New York, like up here at the north, to tend to see this as being that happened in the south. But as Devon Jezek talked about, it's all over the country. It's happening everywhere, and that kind of opened my eyes to what is going on. And then when we came to our class, we did more research. We realized how serious of an issue it was, and that was kind of how we jumped onto it. Yeah.
And then I'm from the town next over that you're about to see. I'm from a town called Southlake, Texas, which has been in national news for the past 5-6 years about censorship, banning certain people from existing in the city, just very white, conservative ideals and ideas. And as you're about to see, we discovered a really young and passionate man. His name is Datavian, and he is one of the multiple people in our generation trying to make a difference in not only our country, but the world.
Our film has gotten into various film festivals, and we've won, I think, 4 awards for our work, which has been awesome, spreading the message. So, I don't know what else really to add on to that.
I think that's
so,
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you guys for
it.
coming so much. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Oh, and warning, there is some talk about sexual abuse and homophobic and racist rhetoric, so if you're ever uncomfortable, feel free to just step out there.
get teary-eyed watching that, actually. It's very emotional. Oh,
Thank you.
very proud of them. Love you. Yeah, sorry, I'm emotional.
That was so well done. It
Yeah.
was beautiful. I just, yeah, I was so moved. And I think it covered so much. I couldn't believe that it's a 25-minute film.
18.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I just
Yeah.
felt like you were able to cover so much while going into so much depth and following this one activist who, oh my God, was just so forceful and articulate and steadfast. I mean, he was just what a soul.
Inspirational. Yeah.
He's incredible. And there's a lot you guys didn't see. Like, we had to
Yeah.
put so much.
Yeah.
To put it all in 18 minutes was very hard. And to, like, get rid of certain... We interviewed a lot of people, so unfortunately we had to get rid of them in this cut, but hopefully we can make a longer version, because there's a lot of information that you guys didn't get to see.
Yeah, and there's so many aspects to the whole issue. So, like, trying to cover that in, like, 20 minutes
Yeah.
was... It felt like an impossible feat at the time, but we did our best.
Maybe just to kick us off, could you talk a little bit about just how did this happen, and how did you choose Tavion, and how did you use this as the story? It's a very powerful story about banned books that really looks at it from the perspective of young people who are on the front lines in the schools that make a difference. Cameron Samuels, you mentioned in there as well, who was also a youth honorary chair for Banned Books Week. Tavion was a youth honorary chair for Banned Books Week Coalition. So maybe tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so Mickey Huff helped us out a bit with that. But also we spoke with Emily Drabinski, who was the former president of the ALA in like 2023, I think. And both of them brought up Tavion to us. And, you know, we looked into him. We saw everything he was doing. He seemed like an incredible person. And obviously, you know, as we've talked about, like all these book bannings, they're targeting young people, they're targeting people of color, they're targeting LGBTQ, they're targeting women. And obviously he pretty much covers like 75, like 90% of all of those categories. And so we thought he was a great person to get his perspective on the issue. And we reached out to him, and he responded like within like an hour, I think. He was so quick. He was amazing. He was so committed to all of it, because he just loves what he does, and he wants to spread the word. So we were very lucky.
And then another aspect, with me being from Texas, and then we heard that Tavion was from Texas, and he's from like a similar area to me. We kind of focused on the state of Texas, and Lainey, the woman in the documentary, she actually knows Tavion and works alongside with him. And I have mutual connections that are friends with Lainey and different women in the community, and so that's how we got Lainey. And then basically we tried getting the opposing side. Everybody that we talked to in the state of Texas basically has already been sued for their opinions and what they've said, so they all said no to us. Yeah. We tried getting like Moms for Liberty, a bunch, Turning Point USA, a bunch of different political action committees that are very conservative. And they all said no. And so then we found this man in New York.
And this man, he's actually part of that library that I was talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
the one that started this whole thing. He's part of that community that shut down that library.
Yeah, and he said yes, and we were a little surprised.
Yeah.
But we were happy to get somebody on the opposing side, even if they were from New York.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was a very interesting interview to listen to some of the other stuff that you did not see on the screen. But yeah, that's how we found everyone.
Yeah, like regarding the opposing side, like how did that feel when you were interviewing him and things like that?
Yeah, so I was the main interviewer. I love talking to people from all different backgrounds because I'm from a town. Basically, I grew up in an area where everybody around me thinks that I'm in the wrong and my opinions are in the wrong, when it's basically just like basic human rights and like caring for other people. So I'm used to interacting with those people. I'm used to interacting with people who genuinely believe that certain people should not exist in our society and our planet. So having those conversations, it was a little hard listening to what he said.
Yeah.
But I played into my Southern accent a little bit and my Southern Christian beliefs, even though I'm not related to that at all.
So did he think like you were on his side when interviewing?
I think like half and half.
Yeah,
he knew. Yeah,
Devon tiptoed around it very well in terms of like being like, yeah, we're doing a thing about like books, but not really saying like banned books and like you're on the opposing side, like all of that stuff.
And then just like trying to like bring up like different things that he talks about. So if he's talking about the Bible, you can be like, I mentioned like, oh yeah, I love this verse, when like I hate the verse, and the verse is like something that he inherently agrees with. So just like trying to get on to their level.
Yeah, and then I think like as a team, we like also went into it like with like safe words and like trying to be like super cautious about our own feelings.
I was so nervous. I
was
honestly
really
was
nervous.
like panicking the whole time because like I'm gay and he was saying like really crazy homophobic things, and I was like, is this actually like safe to be here?
We weren't worried about being there.
Yeah, but it was really okay, honestly. Like he said some crazy stuff.
Yeah, we definitely had to talk on the way back to Ithaca
and like decompress.
Yeah,
and it was a lot for us. Like again, with our various identities, like trying to process that information. Like I'm a woman of color, and like the things he was saying about like critical race theory obviously were very offensive. So
and referring to the gay movement or the transgender movement, and we were just sitting there like, okay, keep going.
Yeah, it was great for the doc, but we were like personally like, oh my god.
Yeah. I don't want to focus too much on this guy, but I like am curious. Did he ever follow up with you all, or did you ever reach out to him about like how the doc like ended up, or did he ever ask to like see the final piece or anything?
Yeah, so I did tell him that we would like provide the footage for him to see, and we only provided his section. I stated that in the piece of paper that he had to sign and agreed. So we agreed that I wouldn't send the entire film, but I would send him his section so he can see and then he can approve it. And he did approve it. He was like, yeah, this is fine. These are my opinions, and I believe that this is great information to share. So,
But he never asked to see the full thing.
No.
He never saw the full thing.
And when we did record, he also like had it be a requirement that he record his own footage. So he had like one of his like church people like set up cameras so that he could have the footage for himself. Yeah. And like, that was interesting.
But no, he has not requested to see the
Have
footage.
you seen if he did anything with his own footage?
I have not.
Actually,
That's a good question.
I try not to interact with that man, but yeah, we should look into that.
So I think like whenever you do interviews for like any type of like journalism, you do have to cut down a lot. So how were you able to like probably go through hours of content and really organize like the train of thought, like the story you're gonna tell?
I've probably watched every interview like 5 times, and they're all like an hour long because like there's so many things going on in Texas specifically that it was so hard to figure out what we could actually fit in under 20 minutes and make sense. So that's why we chose to follow like HB 18 and HB 900, because they talked a lot about it, and we were actually going with Tavion where he was going to testify against HB 18. It was that one? Yeah. So I started writing just different storylines that we could do with the footage, and I worked a lot with John Scott on it. But
it was a lot of revisions. We had many different story outlines, and
there were like 20
many
rough cuts.
Times. Yeah.
We cut a lot. We had to go through a lot of footage though and cut. So like for me as the interview, Lauren was our editor, so Lauren went back and watched it all, and then me, like remembering what we interviewed, I'm like, okay, well we can't include this. Let's cut this section. Let's cut this, but like let's keep this section because this would be a good storyline, and then just keep doing that like over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Very repetitive.
Yeah, and we also make like a lot of. Well, this is we're getting into the weeds, but I was just saying we make a lot of subclips of everything so that we can always go back to them and like we label them so that in case we're like, actually maybe this one's better for this instead of the other one. Yeah.
And then like keep track of all the questions that we ask, and then like put like a tick mark next to like, okay, we really like this person's response, or like while I'm interviewing them, I'll be like, okay, yes, we need to include this in the documentary and stuff like that. So that was helpful as well, but it was a lot of footage.
Yeah.
I'm from one more organization that celebrates Banned Books Week, namely Amnesty International. Word or two about that. The first thing I wanted to say, I'm impressed by your fast cuts from one speaker to another. I wouldn't dare do that if I was making a film. So I guess that's what they teach you to do successfully at IC. Well, anyway, Amnesty International defends human rights of individuals in all different countries in the world. And Banned Books Week started in the US, but this year we are defending 7 writers and journalists and bloggers in different countries. We were defending 8, but one of them got out of jail in Egypt after we'd been writing letters to the Egyptian government. If anyone's interested, we have a local group of Amnesty International here in Ithaca. We'll be meeting on the 21st, evening of Tuesday the 21st, and asking people to come in, or else come in by Zoom, and read from their favorite banned book or prohibited poet or suspicious song for 5 minutes. So glad to have any and all of you. It's going to start with a guy from England reading from 1984. I was just at the Northeast Regional meeting of Amnesty International USA in Boston, and guess who we had coming to speak to us about their activism? Cameron Samuels.
Yes, yes, not a surprise. Cameron gets around. I actually just wrote an op-ed with them last week on the Project Censored page for Banned Books Week. And like I said, I've had the honor of working not just with Cameron, but also Datavion, who interned with us. So I'm not surprised every time I turn around, they pop up somewhere. they're pretty amazing.
Read with us for 5 minutes on the 21st. Come and see me. And
Thanks.
sign you up.
I have the Zoom. I have the Zoom link, so I can share.
Okay. Sweet Marcy, you have the Zoom link? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing.
So kind of going back to the question of like the editing process a little bit, so you were saying you had so many different like rough cuts and how you were going to do, at what point did you look at it and say, okay, this is it, this is what our final piece is, and there's nothing else that we should add in?
I think when we ran out of time.
Honestly, looking back now, I'm like, ooh, I could have fixed that, and that. Like, I don't think, like, in my head, it would never be perfect. There's always something that could be changed.
I never told us that too.
Yeah.
Everyone that we spoke to.
Yeah. Like, I think, like, we had originally finished it, like, early December, and then I even went back last March and, like, switched around a bunch of stuff to what you saw today, and I think that almost elevated it more, so... Yeah, it's a tricky question. I don't think you ever really know.
Yeah.
So if you were to expand this project, because I know like a lot of things, politically have changed since you began it, where would you sort of start? What would you like look for, as like things are evolving?
I would include, Lainey, the woman, she actually is part of the parent board that reviews the books that are challenged. So I would include that experience because one of the books that she read was The Diary of Anne Frank, the graphic adaptation, which was banned in her school district. So I would include like that process. I would also include the political process, like how political action committees are getting involved within school boards. They're paying people to run. They're taking over multiple school districts within multiple states. And then I think I would expand it from outside of Texas. I want to do more of like an East Coast or more of like a blue state maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think maybe even just like expanding out to censorship in general, because we touch on some other forms of censorship, but like now with the state of the country, censorship is like left, right, and center. So focusing on some of those other forms of censorship that are popping up could be good too.
I'm also curious to know, my class that's here is an ed psych class, educational psychology, and just how involved teachers have been. I read Sold with a group of 6th graders, and I think banned because of human trafficking and the way young girls were treated in the book. But again, like, my 6th graders just fell in love with that book, and just thinking about the student experience and student identity and development, which is discussed in there, but just also wondering, I guess, to build off of this last question of how involved teachers, libraries, schools are in this, and if you see that as part of where this goes from here.
Yeah, I think so. My school district back home, they actually made all the teachers sign an agreement where they are not allowed to talk about those things or teach those things. And the teachers that were against it, they lost their jobs. So I think that would be a really interesting aspect to learn about that. And a lot of people were scared to talk about that. So we found teachers and librarians who were interested. A lot of them were just like hesitant to be on screen because their job's on the line.
Yeah, and my aunt and uncle are both teachers in the public school in North Carolina, and it was the same thing. Like, they are totally against like banning books and like they want kids to be able to read what they want, and like their jobs are on the line if they go against what even parents say. Because like the belief of the school district is that parents have say over everything. Like, at least where they are. I don't know about other places.
I'm interested in your guys' perspective in this. As you guys, teachers, librarians.
Especially in the library and classroom, if you want to.
Yeah, and I guess I would broaden it to not only K through 12 schools, but, you know, the ed department here, like, what's our responsibility too to ensure that teachers have the skills to talk about these things if they feel comfortable, but also how do we align as teacher trainers?
I mentioned the Library Bill of Rights. That's our guiding principles there. I think last year when we had this event, I mentioned there was somebody doing a speaker round that was a librarian, and she was suing for defamation because they tend to label you like, oh, you're a pornographer if you share this information. So there's that sort of playing around like 1984 with by using terminology like that. But we try and stand up for one another by speaking out, by being there, by having events like this, raising awareness, encouraging people to get involved in it, and hopefully speaking out if you come into a situation like that, or resigning even, sadly, if you need to. But thank you, because the coverage brings it to people's attention. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I mean, not much, but I was going to say that, it seems like public school teachers in particular, librarians, they're really on the front lines of this fight, and so many of them have been subject to criminal charges at this point. Reputational harm, the fear of losing their jobs. So they're, incredible warriors. So many of them for sort of daring to put their lives and their reputations and their jobs on the line for defending the right to read or defending intellectual freedom in their schools. And then, this is also, of course, it's rippling everywhere. Like, when we think it's just in one sort of quadrant, right, and it's contained, it's like a wildfire right now. I know that you just mentioned, Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point, targeted a professor at Rutgers who has now had to flee the country for teaching about anti-resistance and anti-fascist movements and writing books about it. And last night he tried to flee the country, yesterday, to Spain, and had his flight canceled. So there are academics also fleeing, and because they've, or being targeted by these, some of these same right-wing political organizations that are sort of doxing them and outing them for any kind of work that, again, goes against the dictums of the government. So it's a terrifying time, I think, to be in public school education, library,
and journalism. I was just saying, Joel Simon actually making, and then we have a place here, ICOA, that shelters writers in residence that are being persecuted in their country, and they come here for freedom. Now they're having difficulty finding shelter or a safe place to be. So if we were the beacon of freedom in the world, what are we now? It really is troubling.
I think another aspect is just, I think the average person doesn't understand the effect a local election has on other elections, and I think including that aspect in another documentary would be very beneficial, especially when it comes to school boards and passing certain guidelines that teachers and faculty have to follow. An Ithaca alum wrote, "This book is anti-racist." I recommend looking up the book, it's very, very good. And a teacher in my school district had that on her shelf, and she was fired because the book taught about ideals that the city and the school board did not want to teach, which is crazy. But
And it's happening in more than, as you mentioned, it's not just Texas and Florida. You see at least half the states have laws governing curricular materials, and it particularly impacts literature and history, right? So it's definitely something that's happening all over.
Do you know if there's been any more progress on the fight against HB 900, was it?
I don't think so.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I just know HB 18, and then Datavion has gone off to college, and he's fighting other laws right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Amazing guy.
Yeah. What college is he at?
Rice.
Rice, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Texas. And he's already super involved with like all he's like student council.
Get involved.
Whatever. Like yeah.
Get involved.
President of this, that, and whatever.
All like I found these books as like an escape from like a heteronormative world that like I grew up in, and it kind of showed me that like life didn't have to be this way, and I didn't have to follow all these norms that were in place, and they all had a very deep effect on me and who I am today. So it's very disheartening to see that other kids who were like my age when I read them don't have access to them and might not be able to do that sort of exploration.
HB 900 did pass. Governor Abbott signed it into office in 2023, and it went into effect in January of this year, as far as I can tell, just with the cursory research. But don't just trust me. Look it up.
I know you already mentioned like a few positive takeaways, but I'm just wondering like more of like the students' takeaways from the class, and maybe things that they learned about regarding book banning and content like that really like resonated with you as like a teacher, and like just like maybe your favorite part of teaching that class, because it seems like just like
well, I sometimes think of the course as like a Trojan horse. Like I get to sort of deliver some of, I think, the books that have meant the most to people, especially young people. I mean, so it's like also just a vehicle for great, like reading great books. But I would say that a lot of them, one thing I will say is that a bunch of them, I've already had experiences where groups like Moms for Liberty have come into their high schools and tried to stop their, for example, LGBTQ reading groups. I've had that happen with several of my students. One of my students was literally burned for reading Harry Potter in school. I mean, so it was like, this was the first few years where I had students who had very visceral first-person experiences in their high schools. Another student was a part of an organization trying to resist a parent group from banning genderqueer in their high school. So they came in with that experience and had been on the front lines of that fight. So it was the first time, especially the last couple years, teaching the course where I was like, oh, you are already like been on the front lines of these fights in your high schools. So that was really interesting. But I think the most gratifying thing has been students really feeling kind of seen and recognized by books from, The Bluest Eye to Genderqueer to Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, like a bunch of, I would say Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House, which talks about intimate queer abuse, which is a book that has been challenged a number of times, and she herself wrote an op-ed about it in the Times. But that book, like, students were so relieved to talk about emotionally abusive relationships, just to parse their own experiences, like what constitutes that. So I would just say the relief students have felt, and then the way students have shared the books with their friends, family members, like literally sending the books home, like, here, Mom, here's a better way to understand me. Please read this book fun home. And so that has meant the most, I think, to me, and I hope to the students, is I'm just seeing the way they're sharing the book as this gift of a connection with other people and a way to be heard and seen and understood.
We all graduated. Leila's getting her master's, so it's kind of a very transitional period for all of us, so it's kind of hard to plan, but I think we would all love to extend this, especially in the state of the world.
Yeah, especially now, more than ever. It's more important.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring in the world of independent media and publishing in the fight against banned books, because a lot of where we see and hear these things come from smaller independent publishers. It's not always the bigger publishers that have something that gets banned or challenged, or big name people. A lot of the books that are getting challenged are things that are really important to certain communities that we never hear of, right? And part of the challenge with independent media is getting those books out there, getting those kind of messages out there. So I would say please do what you can to support independent media, particularly local independent media, supporting local libraries, supporting local bookstores, particularly local independent bookstores, is a really good thing that you can do. Also here at the Project Censored page, we actually have a whole Banned Books Week category where you can see the things we've done over the years, including things that you can do to get involved if you're so inclined and if you're interested and want to learn more. I'm more than happy to share any resources with folks if they want to get a hold of me. We have a lot of resources to share, as do our guests here today. So I want to give a big round of applause to our wonderful guests.